BSides DC would like to thank all of our sponsors, and a special thank you to all of our speakers, volunteers, and organizers for making 2018 a success.
I'm John Stoner. I'm going to be giving a talk and hopefully a discussion today about how to get started in cybersecurity. This has been a topic that, if you were here on day one, in this room, we had the recruiters in here. I'll probably reintroduce a few of their overall points that they brought up. They had some good things, especially in the second part of that discussion with the recruiters. I caught the last couple minutes of the guy who was talking about sysadmin into pen testing, so I might actually touch on a few of those sort of similar ideas as well. I will approach this both from a technical perspective, knowledge, skills, and abilities, and then a little bit on the job perspective. So I don't know if I have all the answers, but I'm always willing to try to take your questions. And then afterwards, if you want to touch base one-on-one, I'm happy to contact you, have phone calls, provide some mentorship. This is a little bit about who I am. I'm not here representing my federal agency because they require too long to get approval, so I'm here representing myself. So I work in the federal government. I've worked in national security and intelligence for 18 years or more, maybe a little bit more than that. I'm a cyber threat intel analyst right now. I've done a variety of roles in the military and in DoD contracting until the position that I hold now. I have all the certifications that you would love to have on your resume. I finally got a piece of paper from UMUC as well, an associate's degree. That's enough for me. And I will talk all about that some more. So everybody approaches this topic from different introductory levels. So I'm focused on cybersecurity, but that doesn't still really mean anything either, which I will expand on in a moment. But I don't mean information technology, which is a whole huge other field with niche areas. The two fields are often going to interact, but they're not the same field either. Okay, so just like you can have large pool of expertise in each individual information technology career field, you're going to have the same thing in cybersecurity. Both of these fields are going to be intertwined forever until we destroy ourselves and live in the apocalypse. So the other big important factor is that in cybersecurity, it's a really diverse field as well. So when someone tells me cybersecurity, or I want to work in cybersecurity, that doesn't tell me anything. That's like saying that I want to work, or I do work in the medical field. Are you a brain surgeon? Are you a nurse? Are you an EMT? Do you do medical billing? That doesn't tell me anything. Cybersecurity, I should go into cybersecurity. Great. We need to be a lot more specific when you are having one-on-one mentoring conversations with someone about very specific things you should focus or study on, or those specific skill sets. There is a lot of broad applicability to get started in the field, but I highly recommend you try to narrow down the area of specialization because it is such a diverse field. So those are sort of some of my initial introductory points when we're talking about somebody who's trying to pivot into cybersecurity from either an existing career field or maybe a new college graduate. So those are basically the two areas that we would see. I really like the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. In the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, they identify 52 specific cybersecurity work roles in this framework. So you can download the PDF. There's actually a link in the slides in the notes section here. But even within those 52 specific, very detailed job roles, they still don't cover everything. They still really don't have something that's identified as a pen tester, and for a while they really didn't have a cyber threat intel analyst, although they've just revised it, and there's one that's a little closer to that, which is near and dear to my heart since that's what I do. So again, this is why it's really important when you start to go down this field that you do some initiative self-studying on the types of cybersecurity job roles, so that when you ask other professionals for their advice, we can have a conversation that's most meaningful to what it is that you're studying or where you think you may have an interest, so that you can pursue that. If you're interested in policy and risk and governance and compliance, You know, you might not need to spend a lot of time with NCASE and forensics tools, but I won't know that unless you also have some sort of idea about what you think has piqued your interest. And it's also important to know what does not interest you, which we will talk about as well. So I like the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, and if you dig into that, it really goes deep into the knowledge, skills, and abilities, or KSAs, of all of those roles as well. So it's a little bit, there's a couple job roles in that are specifically focused more on the DoD, the military side, so if you're not interested in that, that's fine. There's plenty of those job roles are applicable across commercial sectors as well. So again, if you're mentoring or you're looking for mentoring one-on-one, it's better for me to have an idea of what it is you either like or don't like, and then we can continue to go down that road so that we're not having you try to study everything. So going back to the point about IT and cybersecurity being different job fields, though, pretty much everybody in a cybersecurity job field has to have that underlying knowledge, the basic fundamental components and knowledge required for a general IT role. So I have seen a lot of people try to jump in and tell me that they want to be a pen tester and they want to start taking CEH, but they don't understand what a TCP/IP stack is, or they've never looked at NetFlow, or they've never opened Wireshark, or they don't understand what a three-way handshake is. So you have to have a basic fundamental understanding of the core IT sort of traditional underlying mechanisms and components and technologies for most of the job roles that are in cybersecurity. So there's going to be a process. If you're coming into this from a completely non-technical career field, you're switching from nursing, or you used to sell insurance or whatever it was, and this is all new for you, we're going to have to start at that fundamental level. You have to really understand what IP addressing is, and if I talk about a NATed network, you should automatically sort of start to know what that is before we worry about brute force passing and dictionary attacks on passwords. So that's just sort of a level set, because a lot of people come in and they have a lot of energy and they want to do X, Y, or Z, but depending on what your background is and your existing knowledge base with regards to IT, it could be a lengthy process depending on the amount of hours and time you have available to start studying in order to really dive into cybersecurity. So I worked for many years as a cybersecurity instructor, and I'm not going to tell you a bunch of BS. There is no quick way to become a cybersecurity expert. Anybody that tells you that is selling you a bill of goods that is false, period. So I guess I'm quoted on now on YouTube. So it also does not require you to pay those vendors money to get started. So it's a good thing I don't work in that field right now. There's a lot of free information or a lot of good books which cost a lot less than a cybersecurity boot camp. So if you sign up for a boot camp, it's not so, I'm not saying that that's bad, but there's clearly some limitations with this. So if you're coming into this, you don't have a lot of IT background, the types of information you would learn in an A+ or Net+ class is the type of information that we need you to start with. I'm not saying you have to go to those boot camps or classes, but the books, the all-in-one books that exist for that's the level of information that's required as sort of a baseline, and then we can build you up from there depending on which specific area in cybersecurity you think sounds interesting or that you want to try to study. So once you guys get the slides, I have a lot of links in here for all of these different resources. There's a lot of really good information on YouTube. There's a lot of people I recommend that you can follow. And again, a lot of this is free. Cybrary is a really good resource as well. There's some stuff that's not as good, but for the most part, a lot of this introductory IT and introductory cybersecurity courses on Cybrary have been pretty good from what I've seen. The other thing that's really critical is for anybody who's trying to get into here and needs to do it faster, you really need a career change, is that you're not going to get hands-on technical skills in a boot camp. The only exceptions I've ever heard of are SANS, and I'm still waiting to go to one because they're too expensive for anyone I've ever worked for. So, as a cyber instructor, I have 4 to 4.5 days to get you to pass the exam. And that's my focus as a cyber instructor. So the training people that sold you the boot camp may have told you a whole bunch of things that are probably not going to be reality when you step into that 40-hour boot camp and are getting ready to take a Sec Plus or Net Plus or CH class on Friday. And that's the truth. I don't have time as an instructor to let you do the CH terrible EC Council labs anyway, and I would advise that you go do them at home where you can experiment. So this is the introductory portion, the fundamentals, right? So here's a whole bunch of sites. These ones are good. They're all links. You can get the slides. I will make them available. You can get my card afterward. We'll make sure you have the slides. And the whole point here is there's not really a cost. There's not a prohibitive cost for people to start studying this. So some of the books may have a little bit of a cost, but what I'm saying is you don't need to outlay $3,000 or $5,000 for all these boot camps. The other thing is that depending on your background and the way you learn might drive how you want to approach some of this initial learning. So I know that there's more than one college available that has online classes where the online semester-long class is A+, Net Plus, Sec Plus, or CEH. So if you're a little intimidated by trying to go into one of those boot camps anyway, and you've already decided you're going to commit some amount of funding to study, some of those semester-long courses may be a better place for you. You're going to get more interaction with the other students. You're probably going to get more interaction with the instructor, professor, the TA with that class as well. And they're going to have a lot of resources for you, like all the online college classes do. So that's another legitimate alternative to boot camps. I have been in some boot camps that have been good, and I've been in some really shitty boot camps. So I'm just being honest with you, is that it is really, you know, if you're spending $3,000 to $5,000 on a boot camp, it can be hit or miss. The same probably could be true for the college course, but at least you have that longer period of time to absorb the introductory material if this is really where you're going to head as a career path. So again, people often want to know, well, what did I do to learn cybersecurity, or they want like one particular path. Well, this is really, again, where I would prefer to get to know you a little bit more and mentor people one-on-one. So hopefully you don't all want me to mentor you on one-on-one, so I have other plans this week. But I think it's really important for you to try to connect with other personnel who can give you some advice. Even if it's only a 5 or 10 minute phone call once in a while, you know, hey, can you look at this training site, or do you have a good book where I can learn about, you know, the basics of hacking or something like that. There are a lot of people in cybersecurity that don't think of themselves as mentors until you ask them to be a mentor, okay? So they just probably have never considered themselves a source of information. But even if they've only been working in the field for 4 or 5 years, that might be someone who has enough information that you could leverage if you know them. And then I also have, one of the other points up here is MOOCs are becoming a lot more, at least I think they're becoming a lot more available. So I didn't put any particular ones up here because they seem to change pretty regularly. I know Harvard has quite a collection of MOOCs about a variety of subjects. So again, use your Google hacking skills and go look at some of the other free resources in terms of MOOCs as well. So that might be another resource besides Cybrary or YouTube. You might be able to find some really good MOOCs that are up to date that you can take, which again are no cost. So the other really big point here is this self-study, experimentation, and trial and error. So I've mentored a number of people that are afraid that they're going to do something bad. Welcome to IT and cybersecurity. I have bricked at least 2 boxes, I've crashed stuff and broken things. I try not to do it at work that frequently, but definitely at home and in a lab environment at home where I'm learning, that is absolutely part of the learning process. You are going to obviously encounter situations where you have done something incorrectly, and that's good because how else will you learn that that clearly wasn't the right thing to do? So a lot of people are kind of hesitant to try this stuff in their home, you know, on their old laptop or in a VM that they have set up, but that's really the most critical. So I can give you all of the resources and all of the links and recommend that you read these books, but for most cybersecurity jobs, especially as a person new to this field, it will be imperative that you have the confidence and understand you're probably going to break some things in learning while you do hands-on skills in your home lab. So I've also tried to mention some people who said, well, the only laptop I have is the one from work. I mean, again, the bar to enter here is pretty low. You can get a $200 or $300 laptop that can probably run at least 2 VMs. So, I mean, if that's really the bar is $300, then I don't have a perfect answer for you. But most people in cybersecurity have many old crappy laptops lying around. That's the nature of people who really are interested in this field. And it doesn't take a super powerful computer to run at least 1 or 2 VMs, depending on what it is that you're trying to do. And the other big one with this is you have to absolutely be able to make some VMs. That is going to be a critical skill. There's a lot of step-by-step sites that should explain pretty easily how you would set up a VM on a machine. So that's definitely a skill everybody will need so that you can practice and learn some of these things in your home lab. So there's a couple beginner VM sites that I linked to here. Again, Google's your friend. I mean, I guess you could use Bing. No, I don't know anybody that does. So the other big portion of this is, one, don't be afraid to screw things up as you're learning, right? That's expected. I'm going to tell you right now, that's expected. And I'm not going to make you learn the new skills. So again, as a mentor or somebody, you know, former cyber instructor, I can give you all kinds of resources. You're going to get access to all of my sites. It might not all be up to date because I'm not instructing anymore, but it has, you know, TCP/IP fundamentals aren't changing much. You know, it has all the A+, NET+, SEC+, CASP, CISSP. You know, you'll get all my PowerPoints, all my decks, all my training resources. It's free. I don't care. I need more people like you in the community, so I'm giving it away for free. Don't tell EC Council. But I can't, you know, you have to bring the initiative and desire and the want. Like, you have to bring the hunger to this if this is what you're going to want to do. So practicing the hands-on skills is part of that desire. Like, do you desire this enough that you're going to set up a lab and figure out how to make the VMs talk to each other, right? Some of this is actually really critical just from a learning perspective as well. Try to get your VM a live internet connection. That's a fun learning experience, right? That is not something that is necessarily going to be done in the first 10 seconds of you figuring out how VMs work. It's a little bit more complicated than that. I would also say if you're only a Windows person, then stop that right now. Figure out one command line for Windows if you're still going to be a Windows person, because Windows is a big part. But you're absolutely going to have to learn Linux to some degree. I mean, maybe you have like a Linux handbook right here, fine, but at least you can struggle your way through it like I would, so that you can understand the operating system. So, you know, VM, how to set up a VM, how to configure a VM, the basics of Linux, and then Windows in depth. These are all core fundamental components of somebody that's going to have enough knowledge about the underlying fundamentals to move into a more technical cybersecurity role. And again, the last line here is most people that you encounter in this field have this trait, desire, or personality of, I will figure this thing out, right? And it is why you get emails and text messages from those people at 3 a.m. on Tuesday, right? Because they're still up, or shit, I've broken this thing trying to fix this other thing, and now I have to figure out how to fix that so that my girlfriend's computer will work in the morning. Yeah, but again, that's also a really good learning experience, right? It's all part of the learning experience. So you're going to break some things, it's not always going to go well, and then this is the magical chart of how everyone in cyber knows everything, according to my mom, at least for me, and that's called, once again, the Google flow chart of, well, I don't know what to do, I'll Google it. Well, did that work? No. Okay, repeat. Right? And then about 17 or 18 times, I have a select set of friends I call at that point. Right? That's my opt-out. About 15 to 18 things that absolutely did not work. And the same is true in a learning environment too, right? So if you have some friends that work in IT or cybersecurity, they will obviously know that you're working and studying in this field. So if you just call them up first, they might not give you the answer, and I hope they wouldn't. I hope they're going to ask, well, what did you try? Right? Because we're not like I know people, I've mentored people who've gone through my classes. I'm going to ask them what they tried to do first. Right? And if they don't have a very good answer, I'm going to be like, all right, well, call me back tomorrow after you try some more things or break something else. Because that is actually, in my opinion, a really critical part of this learning process, is to try to figure it out. The whole try to figure something out is also really critical, because there's absolutely no way somebody in cybersecurity can know everything. There's no way that's even remotely possible. I have about 3 people on my short list of, if I have any question, I'll call them. And then most of the time when I call my buddy, he says, I don't know, I'll call you back. So then he has started the Google flowchart process on his own, but with his level of knowledge, which exceeds mine in that particular area. So, and that's actually true at work as well. Right? So even at work, we don't know everything, but we're expected to fix it, right? Depending on what your role is. Well, again, you go through the Google chart and try and figure out the answer to whatever that situation is at work. And then at some point, you start calling your colleagues and your friends when you don't really know the answer, you need some help. And I think maybe we don't talk about that as much as a community as we should, right? We get all in, we think everybody's a rock star or a unicorn or whatever your term is. Okay, well, there's a lot of rock stars that also like to be friends with other rock stars, right? So, I don't know if that's a great analogy. So they're in a band, right? So we should form the cybersecurity band. All right. So some people want to know more specifics during these types of a talk. Well, again, it really depends on what it is that you want to do in cybersecurity, right? Which of these 52 types of job roles do you want to do, right? Because if you want to go into forensics, then let's not talk about CMMI, let's not talk about GRC, because that's probably not your thing, right? I know plenty of technical people, hands-on, who want to do hands-on analysis, maybe malware analysis, PCAP analysis, some level of technical hands-on analysis, and they absolutely don't want to do anything about policies and writing reports. So there is plenty of space in this community for the skill sets you're going to bring. So I also want to be clear on that. So in my opinion, if you want to do something more along the lines of cyber analysis, which is very broad, right, these might be some types of tools that you might want to look into to sort of understand what's happening. Win sysinternals is very interesting as a suite of tools. So if you're not familiar with that, there's a lot of capability and analytic software that are part of the Win sysinternals. And sometimes people find it's more approachable because it's on Windows. Right? So again, not everything is solely on Linux either, so yes, you should eventually learn Linux and understand Linux, it's important, but you could start to see what else is going on your Windows machine and network as well, which if this is brand new to you, maybe you're not really paying attention to. You might be interested in forensics. A lot of the high-end forensics tools are expensive, but there's a program called Bulk Extractor. That's free. I've used that in a CTF. So I've used a number of these tools in CTFs, and I went into that CTF with, a Windows computer. So I didn't do very well, but I learned a lot. But again, I was able to actually solve some of the CTFs by using the tools that are actually available on a Windows platform. So there's lots of different tools up here. Some towards the end are offensive in nature, password crackers. I'm just a big fan of Malwarebytes. Everybody is always interested in sort of what AV maybe a cybersecurity person runs on their Windows machines. I don't have Windows machines anymore, so. But again, this knowing and exploration of some specific tools means run these in your lab, do some analysis on the traffic or on the systems. What ports are open on your system? You know, at the end of the day, that is very enlightening if you've never really looked at the open ports on systems before. If you've never captured or used Wireshark and looked at the PCAP and followed a TCP stream or reconstructed an unencrypted image, that's kind of fascinating the first time that you do that, because you're really understanding the underlying components. That will be critical when we talk about all of the security things and security concerns that build on top of that fundamental knowledge. So what helps you get the first job? If I knew the answer to this question, 100%, I'd be good. I'd have a Ferrari. One, what type of job? So again, this is all going to be somewhat more specifically tailored once you get to the point where you've narrowed down your field of study or narrowed down what you're actually going to try to apply for. I say if you can get somebody to pay for a SAN certification, get a SAN certification. I mean, I'm just saying. I used to tell people that certified ethical hacker would be the one cert to go get because the exam's really easy. The exam is actually changing now, so I haven't been following this closely, so that may not be the answer anymore, but again, feel free to talk to your friends who are taking these certs and see what their opinion is. So it might be better to get a Sec Plus. That's the only exam I actually don't have. I'm not certified as Sec Plus. But that level of knowledge is going to be really critical. So people say, should I get cert, should I get college? Everybody will have a different answer. I think it's a combination. So clearly the recruiters did confirm that they're spending 6 to 10 seconds on your resume. So whatever you do have in terms of hard qualifications, put that near the top of the resume, right? I have definitely seen people also include the fact that they are studying for a certification. If you want to do that, I'm not going to tell you not to. It shows initiative. Just make sure you don't put that you have a certification that you don't have, because I've encountered that guy and he was not hired. So, some other things, you know, hard skills that let you talk the talk, so to speak, when you're getting to the initial interviews or trying to talk to people at conferences like this where you have orange armbands to get jobs, right? Packet analysis, a much more intimate understanding of what your Windows network is doing, right? At a domain level, do you understand group policy? Do you understand the security concerns around that, right? So it's Windows, but it's, you know, Windows much more in depth than the average person would use. Snort rules or YAR rules, depending on, again, specifically which job role you might be looking to get into. Again, familiarity with VM we've talked about. You got to understand Linux. I would just say go ahead and, you know, get a Kali Linux ISO or live boot disk somewhere and figure all that out. Definitely, if you're thinking about going on the offensive side or vulnerability testing side, you're going to have to understand Metasploit is the primary tool. That should be the first tool that you hack your Windows XP VM with, and then you can, oh, I'm a hacker, right? I hacked into XP. I mean, it'll get you into the doctor's office. Any of the all-in-one security appliances, you know, if you can get some experience or classroom education with Splunk or anything like that, it would be useful. I'm a big fan of OSINT sites. That's a little bit more on the threat intel research side with VirusTotal. There's a lot of really interesting things you can do in terms of research with that. Central Ops, Maltego, other tools like that. Any sort of the free vulnerability scanners. If you've never run a vulnerability scanner, go download a free one and just scan your own house and see what that looks like. Right? Yeah, you might be surprised, and then you start shutting everything off. When was the last time you updated the firmware on your router from Comcast, was it? Burp Suite is another really interesting tool that if this is totally new to you, I think that's almost as enlightening to look at what's going on at the web it's almost as enlightening to me as Wireshark the first time you use a tool like Burp Suite. But again, if you're researching this and you think you're going down a cybersecurity defense analyst type role, then I would run these tools in your lab and start to be really familiar with them. Well, how does that help you get a first job? Well, why can't you have an independent researcher section on your resume? There's no rules about resumes anymore. I mean, there are, but nobody follows any of them anyway. So I would totally have, you know, an independent research or somehow state it that you are studying certain things if you think that's going to be relevant to the job that you're trying to get into. So we'll come back to some job things in a minute. So that's the basics, right? That's the basics, in my opinion. All of the core IT knowledge, starting to understand cybersecurity, and then there's all the stuff everybody wants to do, which is go be a pen tester, because that's like the sexiest thing. It's like the special ops of cyber or something. Everybody wants to be a red teamer. So Kevin Minnick is probably the most famous person. So if you don't know who he is, go Google him, get his book. Because, again, you're going to just have a whole nother set of things to research if that's where you think your job, career, and path lies. Right? So in a lot of cases, this would then be the next phase of your learning and educational process. And this is also true even if you just want to be on the defensive side. As a cyber threat intel analyst, I have to understand what the offense is doing in order to perform analysis or make recommendations. So if I don't understand VPN filter malware, or I don't understand, you know, cryptojacking, or I don't understand the newest 0-day or whatever is out there, then it's really difficult for me to do my job as a cyber threat intelligence analyst. Same for like a SOC tier 3 person. If they don't understand what the offense is doing, then they're probably doing themselves a disservice. So even if you don't think that you're going to end up as a red teamer or on the offensive side of cybersecurity, I think understanding the offense will improve you dramatically as a defensive person and vice versa. So if you're only focused on the offense and you're a red teamer and you really don't pay a lot of attention to the defense, you are probably also doing yourself a disservice to some degree as well, right? So everybody can't know everything, but these are some absolutely free tools so that you too can become a hacker of some variety. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the cybersecurity career paths. I actually don't like this at all, but I didn't want to make my own chart. So a lot of people are going to come in here with some existing skills. So maybe you're, you know, on the programming, scripting side, DevOps, something like that. I think I've talked to a couple interns in here that are in DevOps. So that's great. You're going to come in with that technical understanding. I'm not a scripter or programmer. Thank God for Google in order to help me pass that class. But if you have the propensity to be a programmer and scripter, it is very useful because then you will understand how software works. Understanding how software works will be extremely valuable for most of the more technical fields in cybersecurity, right? Whether it's forensics, offensive, defensive, whatever. If you understand programming and that's a thing that you can get your arms wrapped around, then by all means that will be invaluable to you. But it also means that if that's not your thing, there is still a place for you in the cybersecurity job world, okay? So we have a lot of people who are better at writing or presenting or managing teams, and they all will have a role somewhere in the cybersecurity workforce. So a lot of people want to know, well, how do I get that first job? My number one piece of advice, if you can do it, is take a shift job as a SOC tier 1 analyst, because nobody wants to do that shit. And the turnover rate is very high, which means they're always hiring for the night shift or rotational shift jobs in SOCs or NOCs. So that's my number one piece of advice if you can do it. I know everybody's personal or family situation does not allow for that. But that, especially in this area, that's probably the easiest entry-level job to actually try to get some hands-on experience. And then when you leave in 6 months and your next employer is like, why did you leave in 6 months? You will say, well, it was a night shift SOC job. And they'll go, oh. right? Because everybody leaves after 6 months. So some people will stay hands-on their whole career. Some people, again, what I call them the very technical people, really like that day-to-day interaction with the data, whether it's forensics or PCAP analysis or reverse malware engineering or malware engineering or whatever it might be. They really want that hands-on, sort of in the code. And there are people who will have a whole career like that. At some point, they might be made to manage somehow or some level, but they'll do their best to not become a manager. That's what I have become, a manager. I manage a team of about 37 people right now. So I do analysis like 20% of the time. But the people who are in management positions, even technical management positions, still need to have a technical level of understanding, or else how else can you effectively manage this team that is telling you all of this technical information if you don't have a technical background? Many of us have worked for that person. It is very difficult when the person that you answer to does not have an adequate background in the technical sphere, and they probably should for that position. So we can learn things from previous jobs that hopefully help you. Some people end up being like a security admin. Somebody's got to run the SOC. Somebody has to hire those people every 6 months. Who do you want? All right, somebody's got to make that decision. And then there's a whole slew of other jobs that aren't even on here, and they have the pen tester down at the bottom. The pen tester is the equivalent of, like, the unicorns or rock stars or special forces or whatever you want to call them of cybersecurity. That is a very demanding position as well. So there are some things to keep in mind for your life when you think about things you want to do in cybersecurity. Somebody might want to be an incident responder. That's great. I have no interest in being an incident responder. I'm not going to have a ready bag ready to go for a call at 3 a.m. that I'm flying to Omaha for the next week. No, that's not cool with me. No. So there are some people who love that life, right? Who love to travel, who love it, want to be there on the ground in the action. Everything is terrible. It's like the meme. Everything's on fire, and there's the incident responder. Everything's fine, right? Because that's their life. Right? And there are some people who want to work a 9 to 5 or a 6 to 3. So there are certain cybersecurity job roles that align more with these lifestyles as well. So we don't often talk about that. Okay? So if you're one of these people who likes a sort of normal white collar 40 to 60 hour a week job sometimes that's consistent, then there are some things that probably aren't for you, including pen testing and incident response and possibly forensics. It depends on where you work. Right? So just some other things to keep in mind. You can stay technical your whole career. That was actually the point of this slide, is that you can stay technical the whole career, but we also do need managers at some level that understand technically what's happening as well in order to effectively manage the teams. So a couple other bits of job and career advice. Hand out business cards, whether they're funny or serious. I mean, maybe I'm really old now, but I think business cards are still good, especially if you're going to events like this, which you are because you're here, I think. LinkedIn, Twitter, everybody has their preferred social media options. I would follow industry leaders on some of these preferred options as well. I follow really interesting people on Twitter. So some of them are legit hackers, some of them seem to be semi-legit hackers, and some of them are like industry leaders and professionals, either in DoD or defense contracting. I get a lot of breaking news from hackers. So I still think, at least in this area for cybersecurity in the greater DC, Washington, Quantico to southern Pennsylvania region, it's about having an actual set of skills, being networked and knowing people, and then there being an opportunity. That is what happens most of the time that I've seen for either myself or my close colleagues that work in this general cybersecurity world, is that those three things line up. So at some point that will be important even as you continue your career, because we want good jobs, not just night shift SOC tier 2 positions. Right? So having a successful career also requires work, so I don't know that we talk about that very much either. If you come up and talk to me and you're interested in cyber threat intel, or at least you claim that that's what you're interested in, and you've never heard of NotPetya, then I will give you my business card. Because if you're not following the news related to the area that you are interested in working, then I don't know that you really have a lot of true initiative and desire to work in that particular realm. Right? So that's just one of the things that I kind of focus on. If you can talk the talk and understand the lingo and clearly are articulate with issues that are current in today's specific field that you want to work in, that is very helpful, and it will come across whether you're talking to other professionals at conferences or whether you're talking to that first recruiter that's trying to hire you. Definitely practice interviews. You definitely practice interviews. This sounds dumb. I don't care how amazing you are. Practice your interviews. Have someone ask you questions. There is no substitute for practicing an interview. You will get, the recruiters talked about this. There's only really about 20 questions you're going to get generally in the first interview. They just come in 300 formats, right? Tell me about yourself, what's your strength, what's your weakness, and essentially why I should hire you. Those are the big ones that you want to ace. So even though you may be coming in as a new cybersecurity employee, you may have a whole bunch of other skills that are really useful. Are you good at team working? Are you good at scheduling? Are you good at organizing? All of those things are important as well. We're hiring the whole person. I'm not just hiring your technical skills, right? I don't just get the fact you're really good at pen testing. I also have to understand that you don't know I need you in the office at 9 a.m. That is also understanding the culture of where you're trying to work as well, right? So I worked with a really good friend who was a hacker. That was his primary mentality in the truest sense of the word. And he would work 80 hours some weeks, he would work 36 hours straight, but sometimes we'd be like, where is he today? Like, we have a meeting. And he'd be like, oh, well, I was sleeping because I had worked all night. Right? So that may not always align with the team and the culture. So again, we're really hiring the whole person. You know, how do you come across? Are you articulate? Are you going to be a good fit into the team? Those are all sorts of other traits that come across when you're interacting with other professionals and with that first recruiter. So yeah, there are a couple of rock stars that are going to get hired no matter what. But I am not that person, I don't think, and there are very few of them. So you can also, that person can also find themselves with a name, if you will. Like, I know one or two people that are on my do not hire list because of all those other things, not because of their technical skills. Have some self-confidence. Nobody knows everything in this field. So the other thing I would say with understanding that everybody doesn't know anything, that you're trying to get your first or second job in cybersecurity, if someone asks you a question you don't know, don't fake it. Just tell me you don't know the answer. Because it's worse if you try to make some shit up and it comes across. And that's not what I want to hear. What I want to hear is, I don't know the answer to that question, but I would look here and here to try to find the answer. That's better than muddling your way through it. Study what you enjoy. I'm not a programmer. I also found out I'm not a pen tester. So I'm a cyber threat intel person. I guess they think I'm doing all right. Find a mentor. Find a mentor at your first job, and then try to find a mentor that will be your mentor regardless of where you work. So your mentor should not only work for your same company, because you will get important advice like, it's time for you to look for another job. But you're only going to get that advice if your mentor is not at the company where you work normally. But that's important advice to know when it's time to move on as well from a particular career field. So that's why you need mentors outside of your current organization. I think you guys will get all the slides. I've got lots of links in here, more resources. There's a bunch of free stuff. So I'm happy to take sort of any easy questions that you have. Yes?
What are the highest paid jobs in cybersecurity?
What are the highest paid jobs in cybersecurity? TSS CIA cleared full scope pen testers in this area. Next question. That's the truth. I don't have an easy answer on how you get a security clearance anymore. It's very difficult. If you have security clearance or polygraph related questions, I will talk to you offline. Second highest paying job. No, is that the next question?
How do you find a mentor outside of the company you're working with?
You go to events like this, you hand out your business card or write your LinkedIn on a napkin, or go to trivia events, or all the open houses. I used to work for a company that has like an innovation lab now in DC, and they do events. You got to go events. Either go to events. A lot of people will virtually connect as well, depending on what it is. I mean, there's a lot of like Slack channels and things like that are out there. So however you connect with people, and again, you may be connecting with people who have never thought of themselves as a mentor until you say, hey, I had a career question for you that I wanted to run by you. Right? So again, that would be my general advice. Any other questions? No? That's it? Oh, we have, yes? Well, for me, I secretly joined the Army when I was 19, so yeah, so that's how I got my clearance. A lot of people I know get a clearance via the military. It is possible to work through a clearance process as a contractor, but it is difficult. So I would say if you are in a position that is going to put you in for a public trust, they will take people who aren't cleared. And then you'll hold a public trust. And then eventually what you would want to do is try to look for somewhere that is going to need somebody with a secret clearance, and try to upgrade your public trust to secret, which is anywhere from a 6 to forever month process. And then once you have a secret clearance, you will do the same thing for a TS clearance, which is hard to do because most of the TS clearance positions right now, in my experience, are only taking someone who is cleared, but there are exceptions to the rule. So some of that involves, we may know someone is leaving at a company, so if you show interest, we can start you on that TS clearance process to backfill them. That is going to be a very unusual and rare circumstance. And then many positions in this area will require either a CI, counterintelligence polygraph, or a full scope polygraph. So you will then have to go through that process with the respective agency that is either directly hiring you for a federal position or that has contracted that out. So there's no easy answer right now. Hey, then that's a win. Yes?
You have any advice for people that are already in the federal government but are in cybersecurity?
I would say it's a similar process. So the question is, what advice if you're already in the federal government but not in cybersecurity? I think it's a similar process. I would be hesitant to go on USA Jobs and just apply for everything. That did not work for me. 378 job applications from 2010 to 2016. So it's still a lot of who you know. But I don't think the process is necessarily any different, because how are people going to discover you unless you go to all these events and work your professional network? And there may be different avenues for a Fed to do that as well. And you can actually, every agency is going to be different. I think at my agency, my HR people would be pretty proactive to some degree. That's obviously going to vary according to your situation and agency. But we know that there's not enough cybersecurity people in the Fed either. So I don't know, I need some people, so I'll talk to you. Yes?
Where do you see the threat intel analyst role headed right now?
Where do I see the role headed? We need more of us in select markets. So that's actually a pretty broad question. I don't know how many minutes I have left, only a couple. I got 3 minutes left. So cyber threat intelligence is not going to go away. Really only the major big corporations are effectively using cyber threat intelligence. The federal government and state governments and other international and coalition allies are using cyber threat intelligence analysts as well. And I don't think that the cyber threat intelligence or cybersecurity role is going to go away. I think it will continually change. One of the things in particular is that there used to be a lot of focus on indicators of compromise with IP addresses. And I don't know that me giving anybody IP addresses is really that useful as much anymore, because the APTs turn over their infrastructure too quickly for the most sophisticated threats. Now malware IOCs are still really valuable because they change a little bit less, but the role will just continue to evolve and change as with everything else. So I don't see them going away at all. I know the federal government is trying to figure out what to call us, because we are either 0132s on the Fed, which are intelligence analysts, or we're 2210s, which are IT, neither of which describe anything at my agency. So, maybe time for one more question if there's any more questions. No? All right. Thanks for coming, guys. Thanks for coming to BSides.